This is going to be a weird one. More than 1,000 people were brutally murdered in my country earlier this month. More than that even were killed in Gaza since. I hear people spewing their hot and lukewarm takes all over the place, and I got my own takes on their takes. So my name is Tal, and is this due diligence? I haven't released anything in over 2 years, and in the last few months I've been working on a new video. But then this shit happened, and now I have stuff to say. So this video is likely going to piss off a large enough share of my tiny viewership, but I need to say these things. I won't use any gory B-roll, but I will briefly describe some rather horrific shit. You've been warned. So to those who don't know, I'm Israeli. On Saturday, October 7th, over 1,000 Gazans made their way across the border and into Israel. Some of them infiltrated military facilities, killed and kidnapped as many soldiers as they could. Most went after civilians. A few surrounded a festival where young people were partying and started cutting them down. But the vast majority went into the nearby towns and villages and started slaughtering people in the streets, in their homes. Whole families were butchered, but that description is far too vanilla. The sobbing man you see in this picture has seen some messed up shit in his life. He's a volunteer at Zaka, the organization that picks up body parts when that kind of thing is necessary, most famously after suicide bombings and car accidents. These people's spirits are not easy to break, but none of the messed up shit they'd seen before prepared them for this. Even they, with everything they'd seen, couldn't take it. The evident cruelty subdued many of them. I tried not to consume any of the graphic descriptions and footage, but it's pretty much impossible to avoid it entirely. So what follows is some of the shit that I didn't manage to avoid. I think it's very important for context, but if you don't want to hear some really horrible descriptions, the type of stuff that makes your stomach turn and your skin crawl when watching Game of Thrones, just jump ahead a few seconds. The terrorists went door to door, indiscriminately killing people. In many cases, when families managed to lock themselves in a safe room, the terrorists burned the house down with those hiding in it. In some cases, parents were maimed and murdered in front of their children who were left alive. In others, children were butchered and tortured in front of parents that were then kidnapped by the murderers back into Gaza. Children and babies were also kidnapped. One family was found with both parents tied to chairs, dead. The father's eyes had been gouged out, and one of the mother's breasts had been cut off. Their dead kids were on the sofa. One of them was missing 7 of his fingers. In one town, a group of pensioners were waiting for the bus to take them on a day trip when the whole thing started. They were all shot dead in the bus station. In one kibbutz, with a total population of 800, forces found more than 40 dead babies, some of them beheaded after the attackers were vanquished. Stories of rape and torture are abundant. At least one woman was found dead with her belly cut open. The baby that was taken out of her was also there, stabbed to death. I read a tiny part of an interview with the medical teams talking about the difficulty they're still having 2 weeks after it happened, identifying some of those who were murdered due to the extreme torture they underwent. I don't even know what that could mean, and I don't want to know. Many of the terrorists documented their actions live on social media. Some people learned that their loved ones were killed through social media. The terrorists took photos of the dead bodies and uploaded them to the victims' accounts. After the massacre, handbooks were found on some of the terrorists, laying out the basics of how to do all of these things. This had been carefully planned out. Sadism doesn't even begin to describe it. This video is a response to just one of the many dumb things that people are saying. There are so many other takes that warrant response out there. Maybe I'll make another one, maybe I won't, I really don't know yet. But this video wasn't actually born now. It dates back almost 3 years. My wife was 9 months pregnant at the time. We lived near Jerusalem, in a relatively calm place, very far from Gaza, and it was also a pretty calm time. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, a siren went off. we were pretty sure it either malfunctioned or was it real that we somehow didn't know was coming. But just to be safe, we stood in the safest spot in our house. When you live in Israel, you take note of where in your house the best place is to be in case of rocket fire. Now, at this point, we're just confused. We're not afraid. As mentioned, we were pretty sure that nothing was really happening. And even if it was, we were both in real situations before. But those pretty much always end up with a rocket being intercepted midair. And even when it doesn't, the chances of it landing anywhere near us are pretty slim. And then the house shook. It landed about 200 meters from us, fortunately, in an open area. We were, and are, lucky. Others weren't. As per usual, Israel retaliated. In Gaza, far more people weren't lucky. Hundreds or thousands were killed, many more injured, displaced, traumatized by airstrikes meant to reinstate security, or so they say. Security was not reinstated. And then came too many of the more level-headed voices out there and started talking about this in the most simplistic way possible. I want to focus on just one of those, Rebecca Watson. Not because her take is unique, but rather because it isn't. And also because Rebecca is a person that I take very seriously. So much so that I actually pay money to support her work. And her take here was so bafflingly dumb that I felt that I had to say something about it. So I started writing a script, but then my daughter was born, and the rest was history. Until now. Here's what she had to say about it then.
Israel is almost entirely at fault for everything that's happening, and their actions in occupying Palestine are abhorrent. Israel authorities methodically privilege Jewish Israelis and discriminate against Palestinians. Laws, policies, and statements by leading Israeli officials make plain that the objective of maintaining Jewish Israeli control over demographics, political power, and land has long guided government policy. In pursuit of that goal, authorities have dispossessed, confined, forcibly separated, and subjugated Palestinians by virtue of their identity to varying degrees of intensity. In certain areas, these deprivations are so severe that they amount to the crimes against humanity of apartheid and persecution. And if you think that's just me spouting off my ignorant, biased opinion, please note that those were not my words. Those were words written by the International Nobel Prize-winning NGO Human Rights Watch in their report from last month titled A Threshold Crossed. If you are still clinging to the false belief that this is some big, complicated situation where both sides are at fault, who knows, I highly recommend that you read their entire, clear, and utterly damning report.
The false belief that this is some big, complicated situation where both sides are at fault.
I guess that settles it then, right? A comprehensive examination that accounts for all human rights abuses in Israel and Palestine only mentions one side's wrongdoing. Obviously, this isn't some big, complicated thing where both sides are at fault. Oops. No, here's another part of the report that I guess Rebecca must have missed. I mean, why would she even bother reading the first paragraph of the methodology section? Those never contain anything important, right?
This report focuses on Israel's treatment of Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territory and in Israel. It is not a comprehensive examination of all repressive policies, practices, and other facets of institutional discrimination. It also does not account for all human rights abuses in these areas, including rights abuses committed by Palestinian authorities or armed groups.
So, this report focuses on Israel's treatment of Palestinians and explicitly does not account for human rights abuses committed by Palestinians. And it doesn't show how both sides are at fault? Wow, shocking! Also, this report does bring up a few very clear examples where the Palestinians are at fault. It just doesn't focus on them. So yes, the bottom line of a report about Israel's treatment of Palestinians only talks about how Israel treats Palestinians. If you read this and come out thinking that this somehow indicates no wrongdoing by Palestinians, you really need to work on your reading comprehension skills. And in all likelihood, you didn't just come out with this conclusion. This was your conclusion going in. Yes, Israel commits crimes. How does that lead you to the conclusion that the Palestinians don't? You can't say Israel didn't know and pretend that that's that. Sure, in a vacuum, this conclusion holds. In a made-up reality, where this is all that ever happened, this is not complicated and only one side is at fault. But it's not that much more difficult to look at organizations that fire rockets from civilian areas at civilian areas with no military target in sight and say that this is not complicated and that clearly only one side is at fault. And if you're comfortable taking statements from Israeli politicians into account, why not also use Hamas's explicitly genocidal charter to prove that they are the ones who are at fault? It's not harder to do it, and people do. When you look at one side's wrongdoing, and only on that one side's wrongdoing, unsurprisingly, the picture that you get is not very complicated. When you don't examine what the other side is doing, it seems like just one side is at fault. No shit. In a vacuum, what Israel does is inexcusable. The same is true for what Hamas does. But reality, unlike what some would have you believe, is actually complex. And in reality, both sides are at fault. You can have your take over which side is more to blame, which side's responsibility is greater, but you can't ignore the complexity of the situation. I mean, you can, but that makes your take dumb at best. It always saddens me when Israelis and Palestinians look at this conflict in this one-sided way, but it's at least understandable. When outsiders do it, it's infuriating. Rockets targeted at civilian towns and airstrikes that end up killing thousands of innocent people and blockades and throwing stones and all that crap are all unjustified. But they are not unjustifiable. That is, in reality, I think there's no justification for these things. But there could exist a reality, at least in theory, in which those things are justified. Pretty much every one of these actions or policies can be excused if you look at it through just the right lens, highlighting very specific aspects of it and ignoring other very specific aspects of it, in an extremely ad hoc way meant to justify your preconceived notions about this conflict. And that's because it is complicated, and both sides are at fault. But the shit that went down that Saturday is not only unjustified, it's properly unjustifiable. It cannot be justified or excused, even in the most made-up of circumstances. It's not that there is no justification, it's that there can be no justification, not in the most contrived of interpretations, not even in a completely made-up scenario. Going into a family's home, specifically to kill them, in the cruelest ways imaginable, is beyond excuse. Let's make this simple. I'm an Ashkenazi Jew. Parts of my family were killed by the Nazis, and I can still say wholeheartedly that if Jews in the 1940s went into Germans' homes with the explicit purpose of torturing and killing German families, that would be inexcusable. And if it's not justified in the case of the Holocaust, it probably can't be justified under any circumstances. Even if up until that point Israel was the only one who was at fault, which as I explained certainly isn't the case, but even if it was, these acts are impossible to excuse. For once in this fucking conflict, something happened where there is no nuance. The condemnation should be absolute. No ifs, ands, or buts. For once, something in this conflict, even when considered within its context, with any interpretation that you want to impose on it, isn't some big complicated thing. The conflict still is, to be sure, both sides are still at fault, but this vicious, murderous attack is not. It's pure, unmitigated evil. I can't believe I have to say this, but there should be no conflict between supporting a people's right to peace and freedom and steadfast opposition to intentional, indiscriminate murder of civilians, of babies, of children. You can support the rights of Palestinians and at the same time unequivocally condemn slaughtering babies. I do it, believe me, it's not hard to do. Which is why it's particularly disappointing that I haven't yet seen any statement to that effect from Rebecca. What's worse is that she finally posted something about it. Sort of. Apparently she posted something and deleted it, so I don't know what she had to say. She replaced it with this post, where she says that Israel sucks. 10 days after a massacre, all she's able to say is that the side that was slaughtered sucks. And she also posted this tweet, where she talks about Israel's war crimes and invites us to watch that video, the one where she says that it's not complicated and that only Israel is at fault. So if we hope that this event made her change her mind, get a bit of more nuanced perspective on the situation, here she is telling us that this isn't the case. She still fully supports the idea that only Israel is at fault. Palestinians don't do anything wrong.
False belief that this is some big, complicated situation where both sides are at fault.
I do have more to say about the situation and about the dumb takes that people have regarding this situation, but I don't think I want to get into it now. So if I find the time and the energy, maybe I'll put it all in another video. For now, I just want to thank you for watching, if you watched this far. I don't know, watch my other videos or report me to YouTube or whatever. Just remember, the world, this life, this conflict, they're complex. Let's not make them more complicated by trying to oversimplify them. Have a good one.